All right, so that breaking news, a car crashes into a fire hydrant, sending streams of water into a shoe store building. This breaking news story is unfolding right now in Canoga Park.
This has caused a pretty massive scene on the ground. We want to get straight up to Desmond Shaw live in Sky 9 for us. Desmond, what do we know?
Well, Chris and Sarah, let's start with the only good news here, and that is that the water has now been completely shut off. You see LA City Fire and now the LADWP here. They finally got the water off at the intersection of Canoga and Sherman Way. Now, it all started with this car here crashed with another vehicle I'll show you into a fire hydrant and sent this geyser about 50 feet in the air. Here's the other vehicle that was involved. You can see by how far away and the damage to both vehicles. It looked like it was a pretty violent impact. But now we just learned as well, not only were 7 people transported to the hospital in unknown condition with injuries, and we want to show you another angle here. You can see that the roof of this building, this WSS shoe store, has completely collapsed. The weight of the water and the sheer force of the geyser that was spewing on top of that roof caused the building to collapse. So obviously a huge amount of damage. Is going to be a massive cleanup, and unfortunately the store is probably a complete loss between the roof collapsing and all of the water damage done inside. So this intersection will be shut down for hours, I'm sure, as LA City Fire and LAPD on the scene investigating this mess in Canoga Park. Live in Sky 9 overhead, I'm Desmond Shaw. Chris and Sarah, back to you in the studio.
All right, thank you so much, Desmond, for the update. Obviously, there's so much going on here. In fact, probably more than we can even see from the sky. And I believe we are joined on the phone by Brian Humphrey with the Los Angeles Fire Department. Mr. Humphrey, can you hear us?
Yes, Sarah. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so I just wanted to ask you a little bit about some of the implications of what happened here. What are firefighters dealing with on the ground?
Well, at this time, thankfully, the flow of water has been sustained, and the LADWP is on scene. Their experts have secured the power line, so the danger to firefighters and the public has been largely abated. We're pleased to report that the majority of these 9 patients we've taken to an area hospital have what are described as non-life-threatening injuries, but 4 of the people do have life-threatening injuries, and these 9 patients are now at trauma centers and hospitals across the San Fernando Valley as the doctors and nurses work hard to save their lives. It appears to have been a multi-vehicle collision. As you noted, the one vehicle did strike the fire hydrant. The flow of water into the power lines kept bystanders back, thankfully, and none of them are injured that we're aware of. But very dramatic moments here as firefighters, including our urban search and rescue team, work to secure this WSS footwear store, where we've just gotten word from the manager that all of the employees there are accounted for.
Yeah, and you mentioned that there are 9 injuries. Do we know if any of these injuries were children, and what kind of injuries did they have?
Early reports were that some of the patients may have been young people. The paramedics really had their hands full, and we're still awaiting word back from the responders. But at this time, some of the injuries were described as severe and traumatic. They did involve vehicle collision injuries, and at this point in time, I'm just awaiting the further details. But it could have been a far more dramatic incident, or traumatic, I should say, had the store been open, had the vehicle continued into this footwear store, a very popular large store here at the corner, again, of DeSoto Avenue and Sherman Way in the heart of Canoga Park.
Mr. Humphrey, this is a very complex scene. It's almost like some of it is concealed by the amount of water that we saw earlier. You're dealing with a crash. You're dealing with this water that has now been capped. What were firefighters' primary safety concerns when they first responded to this, since there was so much at play here?
The primary safety concern was the combination of water and electricity, and which I remind your viewers, should they come across a traffic collision, the first rule is the same for them as for firefighters. Cause no harm and don't allow yourself to be harmed. And thankfully, the bystanders, by and large, were able to stay back to avoid the dangers of the water combined with the electricity. Those, thankfully, have been secured. Again, DWP came very quickly to the scene. We worked together with them. We rely on their expertise. In this case, we believe the main serving is, you see the large plume of water from earlier, supplied by roughly a 12-inch water main, supplying a good corner of the San Fernando Valley, that industrial area with water. So there was an immense amount of pressure there. Thankfully, nobody trapped in the vehicle that struck the hydrant, and we're very pleased to report that the majority of these patients do have a fighting chance of survival in what was a terrible collision.
Yeah, this could have been much worse. So great work out there. As you mentioned, 9 people were injured. Some of them may have been children, but they're all non-life-threatening injuries. All right, Brian Humphreys, thank you for that update.